This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we're in Denver, Colorado. Once again, I'm here at the YESS Institute. Since 2001, this nonprofit has supported youth development through peer mentoring, inclusive community building with an expert curriculum. I'm joined by the founder, Carlo. Thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you so much.
Carlo, let's go back a little bit. I mean, you were basically born in Belgium, first generation American citizen. You had 2 law degrees. You went through a 4-year intensive program teaching emotional intelligence coaching. You began teaching throughout Europe as well as the United States, really to business leaders. You did that for quite a while before realizing your true passion was sharing that with our youth. Your husband, father, share with me how this passion got started for you.
It actually sounds a lot now when you just say it like that. It's a lot. It's a lot. So it really started back, when I was in high school already, I had a big passion for social justice in the ways that, for instance, if we would do classes in history and so forth, I was always interested in the social component of everything. And so that's also one of the reasons why I went to law school, really to understand much more what are the social laws and so forth. So what really was the big change was that after I studied, I went with a friend and did a trip on a motorbike from California to Chile. So we started in February 1992. We thought it was going to take us 1 year on a motorbike to go all the way from Mexico, all the way down to Central America, and go all the way down to the bottom of Chile in Patagonia.
That's amazing.
And so we actually took 1.5 years to do so. And we had a budget of $15 a day, and we spent $10 a day. We spent all this entire trip, cost about $5,000. And so we lived in a tent. We were invited with people, and the nice part is that before I made the trip, I went to Spain for 6 months to learn Spanish. And so, because if you go from Mexico all the way down to Chile, all the countries, they are Spanish speaking. And so the part that we wanted to do is that we really wanted to connect to the authentic people in Latin America. And so that's why we had the motorbike. So we went very much away from the gringos, away from the tourists, and go to very remote areas where for the first time they had ever seen, the first time they ever would see a tourist. And so it was really the street children and the children that we connected to there. That really was kind of an awakening for me. That opened my heart. My heart, and I was like, "That's what I want to do in my life." That gave me my compass for caring. I want to do that in my life. I want to find a way of how I can support the well-being of children in my life. I had no idea I was going to do this because I hadn't gone to law school. I was not a social worker or anything, right? And so that's why I later on learned about emotional intelligence. And here in America, I came to America for love. My wife is American. 8 months after I met her, I moved here. And so in America, I brought these 2 components together because in America, you can be a social entrepreneur. And you can start a nonprofit. I had absolutely no clue what I was doing when I started off. And so, 20 years later, we have developed a model that we have reached between 8,000 and 9,000 kids now.
That is an incredible story. I mean, Wikipedia defines emotional intelligence as the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle emotions. You taught this to business leaders prior. Do you feel it's just important that our youth are learning this as well?
Yes, definitely. Because what's happening in the world of education, they call emotional intelligence social emotional learning. And now there's much more an awareness at this time within the world of education, the essence of social emotional learning. Before it was being seen as soft skills in the world of education. But now there's many studies that make a direct correlation, a direct connection between academic improvements, which we see in the YESS Institute, and the amount of social emotional learning, the amount of social emotional competencies that the students are having. So there's a direct connection to that. And then later on in life, where you go into your career later on, that is also where you see in the business world the importance of emotional intelligence, the link with emotional intelligence in sales, in doing business and working with people. Anytime you're working with another human being, you need emotional intelligence. And where are you going to learn this? And so many people learn that from a role model, learn it from a coach or a parent, or from a therapist. But the communities that we're serving don't have that privilege many times. And so that's why it's even more important for them to have these social emotional skills, because they need them more than anybody else. Because emotional intelligence is really the toolkit and the set of tools that you have to deal with the obstacles that life throws at you. And life throws us obstacles every day, all the time, and you don't know from where the next curveball is going to come.
For myself, I graduated from public school, I went to college. Nowhere do I remember learning any of these skills. I mean, do you think this is really an issue, that there is a lack across the board when it comes to the schools in these areas?
Yes, and especially now with the pandemic. People call it mental health, but that is really emotional intelligence, and the skills that we teach with emotional intelligence, social emotional learning, that is really mental health. Mental health is not just that you go to a counselor and the counselor helps you. What we're trying to do at the YESS Institute is that to go much more upstream, so that you don't need to see the counselor, that it has not become as bad that you need to go and see a counselor. Plus also it empowers you more because you actually learn the social emotional skills that you can take care of the problems that come to you, the challenges that come to you by yourself. And you don't derail as much that you have to go to a counselor. So we try to focus much more on prevention and going upstream and teaching the students those skills so that they can deal with that and have much more ownership of that and are actually much more independent to deal with the obstacles that are coming their way.
Much more preventative approach rather than a reactive approach. I mean, we all process emotional information. We use it to navigate the social environment. It's safe to say that some of us process better than others, and that really is at the heart of what you're teaching.
Yes, and the way that we do it is that we ask older peers inside the schools, we ask them to be role models. Because if you have any form of learning, any form of mentoring, when it comes to social emotional learning, it has to be an environment of trust, and it has to be that the person who's teaching me this, that I believe that you understand my challenges. So if I would go as a white middle-aged man and talk to a 15-year-old kid, which is not white, and has very different experience than me, he's going to look at me and he's right. He's looking at me and saying, "You have no idea." And you know what? I have no idea. But the 17-year-old who grew up in the same environment, who is dealing with the similar obstacles, he does have an idea. And so we are asking these older peers to be role models to the younger students. We call it that because they have the same cultural zip code. They only just have the zip code, but in cultural zip code, meaning that they have experienced very similar inequities, they have experienced very similar obstacles than the other students, and are a role model that despite that, you actually can be successful.
That is interesting. You've trained over 6,000 plus role models. You've really created a community within each school that you work with. Is this taught directly to the students? Is it taught to the existing staff? Or is it really a combination of both?
At this moment, the way that we have it set up is that we believe that kind of the secret of our success is that we have been able to build a community inside the school. As you say, you need to build a community. So we have a YESS classroom. Yes, is completely integrated into the school. So we become an elective during the school day for about 100 students every day. And so those students come to YESS every second period, every third period. So we are serving all these different students inside the school. And in that classroom, we have a YESS staff member who is completely integrated into the school. And so works then with students in these small groups, works then with students where the older students are being the mentors to the younger students. So that is the model and what we then do is, so you build a safe community, you bring in the peers, and then we infuse that with social emotional learning, emotional intelligence skills. We developed a curriculum of 880 pages, which is research-based and meets all the instructional design best practices that we can teach social emotional learning to those students, which is a multi-year curriculum, from how you build community to how you develop healthy relationships. We have it around substance abuse, around substance abuse, and around financial literacy. We have where they can do a project of how they can give back to the community. So it's all these different components, how we are trying to teach the students that they fully embody those social emotional skills.
So the YESS classroom probably has kind of evolved throughout the years, and you have fine-tuned what really works, what doesn't work. You're teaching self-awareness, self-management, yet at the same time you're teaching awareness of those around you. I mean, these are really relationship skills you're going to use forever.
Exactly, and especially for these older students, because if you look at the older students who we call the peer mentors, many of these students, well, first of all, if many of these students were the mentees first, and they have evolved in the program, so you actually start from a student who is really hanging on by his nails sometimes inside the school by way of speaking, and so that student has now become a leader in his or her community. So you really turn that student around and you teach the student just the feeling of of how it feels to give back to your community and to make a change in somebody's life. And many of these students, they are invisible leaders already at home. They take care of their younger siblings.
Sure.
They already are an influence on other people. But if you would ask them if they would identify as a leader, they would say, I'm not a leader.
Crazy.
But they're being taught these leadership skills, and they experience firsthand the impact they have on somebody else. That because of their presence, because of them being in the YESS classroom and working with that student now their grades are going up, they're coming more to school, they stay out of trouble in the school, and that really impacts them a lot.
It's amazing. I mean, these are relationship skills that they're going to use within the school system, but honestly, they're going to use this in every aspect of their life, especially those that decide to take a position of leadership. Like you say, some of them don't even realize they are leaders, yet they're amazing leaders if you look at it. In a way, I see you're still training leaders of tomorrow. You're still doing what you did back then, just in a whole different way.
We have one board member, and she teaches sales leadership, and so she actually has written a couple of books, and she says exactly what we're teaching at the YESS Institute. She is teaching to high-end executives in sales, and so YESS is teaching those skills that you actually want as an employer, because as an employer you can teach skills to an employee, but you cannot teach who that person is. And so you're always trying to hire for who somebody is, not so much of what they can do. And who is a person, that's really about the emotional intelligence that they have. And about if this is somebody who has integrity, if this is somebody you can rely on, if this is somebody who is a team player. All these different components, these are essential components to be successful in your career. And so that's really being taught already in middle and high school by the YESS Institute.
In my home, I've always taught my kids how to communicate to others. But even more important, I teach them how to communicate to themselves, how we feel about ourselves, our body image, what we eat, taking care of ourselves. I've found that this is not so common. That's taught in the home. I mean, is this something that you experience firsthand and you're able to see that?
Well, we see it. Well, let me think about your question for a second. What is it that you're looking for?
I would say, is this not so common that it's being taught in the home? Obviously, it's not being taught in the schools, but even in the home, you start realizing kids aren't learning these things in the home, so where do they pick this up from?
Yes. To have these emotional intelligence skills or these social emotional skills, they can come from the home, of course. They can come from people who have been very influential in your life, being a grandma or a coach and so forth. But many people don't have these skills because I, for instance, see how I grew up. And in my family, for instance, both my parents, they went in Belgium to the Second World War, and so they were looking at economic survival. And so their main purpose was to provide economically for their children, And so later on, this entire social emotional component is actually another layer, almost like in the hierarchy of Maslow. First, you have to take care of all the physical needs, and then you actually go much more towards the emotional needs. So many students don't have that, and so where do you learn this? And again, that is many times it's a question of privilege, that you've had the privilege that you maybe of the environment that you grew up in, or that you can pay for the training that you can get that. But the communities that we're serving, they do not have that privilege, and so we want to bring these skills to that community so that they also can benefit from this, because as I said, is that they already have, even because they already have more obstacles than many of the other communities, and so that it's become much more equitable, so that they are able to compete with the other students later on, also for jobs with people who've had the privilege to receive those skills.
I think even the ones that have a privileged environment, they only pick up a piece of it. they don't get the full picture of everything. Like I said, it may be really economically based, or maybe different ways. When a person thinks of brain development, especially when it comes to school, I think of reading, writing, arithmetic, yet these are skills that are going to make an impact, maybe even beyond the algebra that I struggled with.
Yeah. So the reason why we set up the model that we have within the YESS Institute is actually based upon adolescent brain development, because we learned from some very, very smart people in adolescent brain development is that in order for students to learn, one needs to provide this safe community, needs to create a sense of belonging, so that students who walk in, this might be students who come from communities where they have experienced some violence, and these students are in somewhat of an emotional survival, that those students, if they're in emotional survival, they are tapping into a lower end or part of their brain of emotional survival. Now you walk into the school, and the school is asking you much higher cognitive skills. Well, if you're in emotional survival, you cannot access that part of your brain. So for students to learn inside a school, they need to have, one, a very safe community. They need to be safe in that community. Two, they need to have a sense of belonging, and then they can learn. And that's exactly what YESS does. So it is aligned actually with the research around adolescent brain development.
That's interesting. I have a daughter who just turned 14. At that age, I start being concerned about peer pressure, even bullying. Are these all components of the program that you're able to help with?
Yes. So it is, because that at the level of your daughter, middle and high school daughter, these are real problems that she has, and these are real obstacles that can come to her. And so that is exactly what the YESS Institute provides, is that how do you navigate these relationships? But also, we focus a lot, emotional intelligence starts from within. And so it's important that students understand their own identity, their own self-worth, and grow that level of self-esteem and self-confidence, so that bullying goes like water off a duck. The bullying will not work, because your daughter will be so self-confident and so self-esteem and has the healthy relationship skills that how she's going to counter the bully.
That is interesting. So through the YESS classroom, they're learning really directly to the student. As far as the YESS Academy, is this something for the professionals, the staff, that are able to get training so they can spread that out as well?
The YESS Academy is my vision from day one, is that how can we get YESS in every high school in America? And so what we want to do is that how can we find a model, is that we have worked for many years on a model. How can we scale that? How can we bring that to another level? And so we want to do this in the YESS Academy, where we do a couple of things. One is that we have created products. We have a curriculum. We know the social emotional curriculum. We have a curriculum with regard to cannabis as well. These curricula are online, so they can be used online. We have a model how you do peer leadership inside a school. We have an extensive way of how you can create the school engagement through the YESS classroom. So we do this in Metro Denver here in 12 schools with 1,200 kids every day. How can we go to Steamboat Springs? How can we serve a community in Iowa, or in Chicago? So that's what we're trying to do with the YESS Academy, and trying to figure out how we can also make a difference with students who are waiting in the wings in those communities as well.
That's exciting. So with the YESS Classroom, the YESS Academy, these are programs, like you said, pretty accessible online since 2011. You've been building that. How do those two programs, how do they differ from the YESS Mentorship program? Is the Mentorship program designed to be flexible, and can anyone get involved with that?
Yes. So the YESS Mentorship program, well, first of all, we don't do adult mentoring. We just do peer mentoring. Sure. And so what we want to do is that we want to set up a model where we build the capacity inside the schools, instead of us doing it, that the school integrates it and customizes it to the model that they already have. And so we can teach the people inside the school kind of a train-the-trainer model, where we provide the curriculum, or we provide the model, whatever they want, any of the different ingredients of YESS, and can teach them how to do it, so they themselves can integrate it into their own school community.
Anyone out there who has realized any amount of a success, they realize that the road to success is lined with responsible decision making. I can't imagine anyone not saying yes to your program. Tell me how folks out there can help this nonprofit, how they can be involved.
I think that the ways that people can involve, for instance, educators can be involved in asking us in what way we could support them. So, because every educator in America at this moment is having a myriad of challenges at this time, especially after the pandemic. Well, we're not after pandemic; we're still during the pandemic.
Yes.
So how can they reach out to us and say, look at our website and look at the different components that YESS has and how we can support them. Then, if you're not an educator, you might have expertise in marketing and PR and business development, all these different components. They can help us as well, because we're trying to kind of take an entrepreneurial model where we take the products that we have created here and how we can serve other educational communities as well. So people can bring their expertise, and we are a not-for-profit, and so we definitely welcome financial contributions at all times, of course.
That is interesting. We grow up, we learn much about IQ. We don't learn about emotional intelligence. I mean, raising the awareness for people out there. You've been recognized by the mayor multiple times for a guy, like you said, didn't know anything when he started. I think that's amazing. You're touching 700 plus students a day. Does this continue to be rewarding for you?
Yes, it is definitely rewarding, because this is what I'm supposed to do. I believe if you're so lucky and so privileged that you find a job that you're supposed to do, that is your path in your life, then it's very hard to experience burnout, or then the passion remains, because the flame is always there. And so once I believe that somebody has been able to access that flame inside of you, and of course you have to nurture that, then the passion will always be there. And the passion is there because there's so much community buy-in, of course. If from the first years everybody would have said no to me, then it would not have worked. Of course not. But I stand on the shoulders of the community. I stand on the shoulders of absolutely wonderful stakeholders at all different levels, from funders to board members to staff to student leaders. That's the shoulders that I stand on, and that makes it very easy for me to continue to do that.
Exciting. We're now celebrating 2 decades of serving the community in that way. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. I'm glad you sat down with me again. Viewers, let's take a look at the bottom of the screen right there. What you're going to see is our website. On the website, you can learn more about the mission of this program that began back in 2001. Take a look at the programs that they're able to provide for you. I mean, there's many ways really to get involved, especially when it comes to mentoring out there. This really has created an impact. I mean, it's pretty impressive to look at the impact in stats. It's one thing to sit down and look at all the different stats they have on there for you, but to really watch some of the videos and listen to some of the testimonials of these students who don't even realize that they're leaders, and yet the ripple effect from their family all the way out to the community and as business leaders is quite amazing. Once again, that is the YESS Institute, teaching students emotional intelligence to support them on the road to success. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and if you don't know, now you know.